Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 4th, 2021 Hopkinton School Committee meeting. As a preliminary matter, this is Amanda Fargiano. I'm chair of the Hopkinton School Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Leah Batley-Rafferty.
Here.
Meg Tyler.
Yes.
Joe Markey.
Here.
And Nancy Kavanaugh.
Here, yes.
Great. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Carol Kavanaugh. We couldn't hear you, Carol.
Yes.
Thank you. Jen Parson.
Yes.
And Susan Rothermick. Oh, are we having Susan tonight? I think Susan will be joining us a little bit later. Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Tonight we are thrilled to welcome our HHS Student Council representatives, Charlie Nealon.
Here.
Hi, and Lucas Nealon.
Here.
Welcome. Also, we will be hearing from Upper Charles Trail Committee, I think Chair Jane Moran. I don't know if she's here yet, but we'll come to her on the agenda. And also Hopkinton Middle School Principal Alan Keller, who also has not yet arrived. Okay, I now need to read my script. Good evening. This is the open meeting of the Hopkinton School Committee, and it's being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the school committee is convening via Zoom video conference as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting is being broadcast by HCAM through many of its channels on HCAM TV, Facebook Live, and also on their YouTube channel, and it will be recorded for future viewing. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body and are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda materials unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For public comment, as we have posted, public comment was to be submitted via email by 5 p.m. for inclusion in tonight's meeting. And I think that brings me to the first item on the agenda. So, if I may invite you all, if you are willing and able, to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so here we are, and it is time for recognitions. Does anyone have any recognitions for tonight?
I actually have quite a few.
Oh, excellent. Dr. Kavanaugh.
All right. My first one is I just want to recognize that we finally made it through halfway through this school year. And so I do want to recognize all of the administrators, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, everyone in our secretarial staff, everyone who has worked amazingly hard to make sure that our kids have gotten what they needed and also that our doors have been able to stay open for the majority of our school year. I want to thank the people who are working with us on our reopening group, our reopening planning team. They are actually giving up quite a bit of their own personal time to work on this. And even if the meeting time isn't significant, there's an awful lot of research and reading that they're doing outside of the work. I would definitely be remiss if I did not say thank you to Mr. Person and all of his maintenance guys who were out there removing snow, as well as Mike Manser in the highway department. That was an enormous amount of snow. And when we came back on Wednesday, the parking lots and the sidewalks and everything looked great. So thank you to them. And I want to thank our two public health folks, Casey Morrow and Sean McAuliffe, as well as Chief Slayman. I have been on the phone with them quite a bit this week, talking more about vaccines for the schools. And I'm really pleased with the work that we are collaborating on. And I have a couple of school things, but I'll save them for my superintendent's report. So thank you.
Sorry, I said that's a great list, and hats off to everyone on that list. Thank you for sharing those recognitions. Anybody else? Okay, public comment. I don't believe we've received any public comments tonight. Nancy, have you received any?
I have not for tonight. Thank you.
Other members? Okay. And that brings us to the most exciting topic on the agenda, the student council report. We have typically, as people who like to watch our meetings will know that in normal years, we have had the good fortune of having student council reps come to our meetings and just let us know what's going on in the schools. We do all this work for the students, and it's always so great to hear from students what's actually happening. So this is sort of the reboot of the student council members joining us, and I'm so excited to have Charlie and Lucas Nealon here. And I don't know how you guys want to divide and conquer, but the floor is yours.
All right, first I just want to thank you for having us, and also just thank you. I know that this year hasn't been like other years, so it's a lot of stress on you guys. So I just want to thank you for like helping figure out this year and really trying to make this year the best it can be. And so I just want to start by going over like how I felt the year's gone since quarantine, the summer, and then leading up kind of to now. Of course, like everybody at the beginning of quarantine, we all felt a little lost, confused what was going to happen. I feel like it was handled pretty well. Like we couldn't go into school, so of course we'd have to Zoom. So I think that's the most appropriate way to handle it. I feel I had no issues with it. Of course, just the hassle of like sitting in front of the screen, but what can we do about it? I feel it was a little iffy with grades and stuff like that, how it worked. The pass and fail was a little hard just because I know I put in like, I got all my work done, I did like extra credit, did all this stuff, but only to get a passing grade. Whereas I know some couple students would sit there with their screens off, never answer questions, not do anything, and they'd also get the passing grade. So it was a little, I don't know, like unfair between that, I feel, especially just because I was really working on those grades and getting those to colleges and boosting that GPA. So like that was a little off, but otherwise I enjoyed the last end of my semester as much as I could. And then summer, of course, really unaware, naive, what was going to happen, like how the school year is going to work out. But there's just so much planning. Of course, like you guys need to take your time, and I respected your time, and I didn't have any complaints. And then I think leading up to school and like the opening, I think the asynchronous the days, they actually work compared to other schools I've talked to, friends from different schools. Like I really enjoy ours the most just because you get that day off, but it's not only a day off, it's a great day to like recoup after that day at school, especially with beginning of the school year. Like that was such a big change, going in separated, like not seeing half my friends, classes, like schedules all over the place. So it's nice to have that day just to kind of calm down, get my work done. I think that the workload's just been a little heavier. I don't think I've ever had as much schoolwork as I've had this year, especially with it being my senior year. I was like, yeah, but it's manageable, but I feel like I'm taking it pretty well. But I've seen some students, and it's kind of sad seeing some of them, a lot of them not as joyful and happy as they've been in past years. So like that's a little like sad, and especially seeing some underclassmen. I feel like there's a big, luckily being seniors, we've like learned the majority of the stuff we need. This year was kind of like to explore other classes I could take and stuff like that. So luckily I can do that. But for some underclassmen, I think it's a little harder, just because they're not unified as a grade and not really unified within their classes. And there's a lot of like individual work, which are kind of getting away from their social and group skills that like I think was a good like thing I learned in my years at the high school, and really prepared me for college, where I'm going to go off and I will be by myself, like no leadership from my parents, like meeting new people. So I think it's really hard on them. So we're really trying, student council, we really want to try to like find some ways to kind of be able to bring those grades back together and kind of like show them that even though this isn't a normal school year, we want to make sure that you guys are being heard, and we appreciate you, and we really want you to be able to gain the skills and have the high school experience I was able to have, but under these circumstances, of course. It was really weird going into the fall, like no spirit week or anything. That was like taking away a little. I feel like, especially as seniors, and I heard a lot from other members in my grade, they would always come up asking me like, do you know what's going to happen with this? Like, when's our next event? Like, it's the first day of school, we had that. So like, what else can we do like to commemorate our beginning of our senior year? So we didn't get much there. So we're really trying to strive for the spring, seeing as much as we can do. And then winter pretty much the same and went on. And now we're here and we're trying to make some strides and changing up. I think the schedule will change. It's difficult on some people just because I know I've relied on a lot of my async days to be working and stuff like that. Thank God my schedule has been able, my earlier shifts in the morning aren't until after my beginning of the day, but I know some couple friends that will be working in the morning and then they pause and they're able to leave their work, go into their car and Zoom from there, which is manageable because a lot of them have said it's better than their house. It's less noisy. So there's like, they're working. They said there's a little throwback from some teachers saying that isn't a right environment for them to be doing their Zooms in. But I think with like a last minute kind of throw in with this semester, it was kind of hard just to kind of switch up my work schedule, and like other people switch with their work schedules where they've been able to fix those issues, but some teachers aren't appreciating the way they fix them, which I think is kind of tough. But otherwise, I think it's like a great job. I think I didn't mind going this morning. Didn't do that much, but still, at least I'm getting my brain working for the day other than my schoolwork and like having some interaction with my class. So that's why I think I felt leading up to it. And then my brother Charlie's gonna expand on what we have in the future and from now on. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. So basically my feelings are like the same as Lucas's. I mean, we're twins, we kind of have like the same ideas and stuff like that. But one thing I did want to say about just like the beginning of the school year is some teachers do teach differently now. Like some teachers try to cover as much as they can as they would in previous years. So sometimes some teachers will go through units super quick while other teachers will take their time and kind of help us develop our information, stuff like that. So that just has been a challenge in some classes where I've kind of been getting more of a workload compared to others. But for some of us, obviously been manageable, but others I've seen, like Lucas has said, like I've seen them struggling. I've seen them staying up late, trying to get all their work done. And so sometimes I feel bad because like it's our senior year too. So some of my classmates, I would like to see them at least enjoying their time and not being super stressed. But in regards to like the upcoming stuff, like student council, we're trying to push for having some fun things for the school to look forward to, because obviously this year is so different and we can't really have pep rally and stuff like that. But we're still kind of hoping to have some in-school stuff that we can have during the day for, if it's Spirit Week, we'll have in the future where we can just have everyone dress up and not have that pep rally unless we can do some type of virtual thing. But we kind of want to lift those spirits up because in the beginning of the school year, we did some fun stuff. We decorated the school for Halloween and we got a lot of awesome feedback from the teachers. The teachers loved seeing all the stuff we did. I know the students came up to me and they were like, this is so cool, like with all the spider webs and stuff we put around the school. And then as well for winter, we put up some light and stuff like that just to make it, just to give that spirit that we're missing. And for the seniors, we did figure out a way to have our senior costume Halloween out on the track. It was a little bit cold, but we still had a blast. I loved seeing everyone in my grade dress up. I mean, some people have been planning costumes since freshman year. So it was nice to see everyone in their costumes. It was nice to see our grade all together because we haven't seen our grade together since last March. So that was nice. But for student council in general, we meet almost every month and we kind of discuss different ways and different events we can have and take place for the future. One of the big events that we have is Penny Wars. So we've kind of been thinking logistics on how we can have a safe Penny Wars. And if you know what Penny Wars is, we basically have students bring in coins and dollars, and it's a competition between each grade, and whoever raises the most money gets to keep half of the money, and half the rest of the money from all the grades goes to student council. So in previous years, everyone loves that. We love watching someone drop a $20 bill in someone's bucket and reducing people's amounts of money. So that's really fun. So we're trying to figure out ways we can make that safe and have that, as well as for seniors, because we don't really know what we can do right now. In the spring, we're kind of figuring out some events we can have where we can recognize the seniors and kind of give them that special moment like they usually have with the boat cruise in Gillette Stadium. So there's a core group of seniors. There's 10 seniors, including Lucas and I from student council and our class officers for class 2021. And we meet lately like twice or maybe 3 times a month. And we're kind of just discussing ways we can bring our grade together and kind of unify them, even though we're split. And in general, our grade is split. We aren't really one. So we kind of like talking and discussing ways to bring our grade together towards the end of the school year so we can have that last moment together and kind of recognize all the years we've had together and all the memories we've built with everyone and our teachers. So we're kind of trying to figure out what we can do, and that's still making progress. Obviously, because we need to figure out things we can do that keep everyone safe, but also things we can do that will still be fun and not feel like it's just forced fun. But that's basically a majority of the stuff that we're doing right now. And obviously, once we figure out stuff with vaccines and stuff like that, we can maybe make some changes. But for right now, that's student council and the seniors objective.
Thank you so much for that. Before I comment, I'll throw it out to my colleagues. Does anyone have any questions for our visitors? Nancy.
I don't have any questions, but just want to say how nice it is to have you guys here and how great it is to hear all the stuff you're doing for not just your grade, but for the high school in general. And I know it's been a tough, not just this year, but back since March. And it sounds like you guys are really making the best of it and really trying to make the best for all of your fellow students. So I want to just thank you for that and for coming here and giving us the opportunity to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to say thank you also. Thank you for all the creative ideas that you have been putting out there and keeping the spirit alive, not just for your class, but for all the classes at your school. And you mentioned your patience, and thank you for your patience, but also thank you for your ongoing ideas and contributions, because it's important that you raise concerns quickly and not always wait. So we appreciate when you reach out with new ideas, either in whatever channels is appropriate. So thanks again for your involvement.
Leah?
Yeah, I'll echo the thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate how honest you were about your experiences starting in March, the good and the bad. I really appreciate that. It's important for us to know. I also really appreciate the fact that even though you two are, like everyone else, going through such a hard time, you're spending so much time thinking about how to raise other students' spirits up and how to help them out. That's huge, and that's a great sign of you taking your responsibility on student council very seriously, and that is very appreciated. So thank you for the report.
Well said. Maggie, good?
I'm good. Just ditto what everyone else has said.
Yeah, I think, my colleagues have said what I would say, except that, the thing I love is hearing you talk about your year is just the agility that you have shown. I mean, as things have changed, they changed in March when, you guys were juniors, and then you had to go to remote, and then, we started a school year with a different mode, and that was an adjustment. And then, we had some changes to the schedule, and now, kids are like, I got a work schedule. I'm going to Zoom from my car. Like the ways that we are figuring out how to keep going, keep moving forward. It's just really impressive. And to hear the way you are just kind of learning to take it in stride, recognizing that you can do the best you can do with what you've got in front of you. And, you've cited so many examples of, there were things that were disappointing, the pass fail grades. That was probably tough for you to adjust to, but understanding the big context, going with the flow, still applying yourself and doing the work, even though, you recognize that the grading is a little bit different. And, I think you two are really great representatives of all of the strength in the student body, and the way that you guys have all just made it through. Like you're just adjusting like all of us. And it's just wonderful to have you here, wonderful to hear your experiences. Interesting to hear as we know the teachers are doing a great job. Like they're all adjusting, so that some of the pacings are different, and you just have to get used to all the changes. And I'm very proud of the environment that we have. I think you guys are great representatives of the whole environment that you're in with Mr. Bishop and the teachers and so forth. And so I'm excited for you for the spring. It sounds like you're putting your creative hats on, and I hope you're able to come up with a good way to recognize your class. I'm sure you'll come up with something good when the weather gets a little warmer and you can get outside. But I think that's all we have. Any other comments, Dr. Kavanaugh? Are you good?
I'm good. I just want to thank them. It was absolutely enchanting to hear about your experiences, because we see it from the other side and we don't know what it's really like when you're in classrooms or on fields or not on fields. So thank you. It was great.
All right, well, come back or send your friends. Hopefully we'll see you in a future meeting, and good luck to you both. And thank you for taking the time to get on Zoom yet again in your day. So we really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Definitely see you again soon. I think we're up in the schedule another time.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, that was so fun. Okay, so we have superintendent's report and chair report, but we're going to flip-flop tonight because I think my comments are brief and they sort of segue in probably to some of Dr. Kavanaugh's report.
Did you want to do financial first, or?
Oh, sorry, I did. Yes. Financial report, Ms. Rothermick. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I didn't know if you want me to share the screen so that the community can see at least that front page. I don't know if that matters. Okay.
That would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, everyone see that okay? Okay, so this is the financial report through the end of January. And at this time, we are still trending with a positive variance, which is great news, of $49,000. You can see that the payroll variance is a positive 20,000, and our expense variance right now is a positive 29,000. Our out-of-district tuitions have actually been trending in a very good way. Dr. Zaleski has been working very well with families and helping students to be in the place that is the best for them to access the curriculum. So just as a reminder, in terms of where we were in positions that have been added, the high school teaching and paraprofessionals, those were really put in place again to allow for the hybrid days, the hybrid teaching and class coverage. The good news is we just received another allocation of COVID money. CVRF is what that's called. These employees, the first three, the high school teaching, the paraprofessional, and the nurse, throughout the fall, they were paid through that COVID money, but which expired on December 31st. So now we have a new allocation of money So there is potential that we'll be able to move some of these positions that were hired back into that CVRF as a way of using that money. Now, we haven't discussed what the strategy is, but that's just some potential that would continue to help move us in that positive variance momentum. So you can see again, athletics, we had talked about adding the assistant coaches to really assist with the keeping the social distance and yet putting in that strength and conditioning program, and 2 paraprofessionals that were hired. Down in terms of positions not used, of course, with COVID, we did not hire summer help for the building and grounds. And system-wide professional development, we will not be using these subs. So that was a decision made by the administration. And athletics, this are the fall sports that were not run. So you can see that was offset by the additional coaches that we had to hire to run our fall sports. But unfortunately, we had to make the decision in our first season to not run the middle school program. So again, at this point in time, we are running at a positive variance of 49,000. And if we move more money into that additional allocation of COVID money, that could improve our position further. Are there any questions?
Anybody? I think that was very clear, and we have the detail beyond it.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Going once, going twice, no questions. And Nancy?
Quick question. If with this additional money coming in to fund some of those positions, is there the potential that we would be able to use any savings we are able to appreciate for one-time purchases to help offset next year's budget? I know it's early to know that, but is that something that would be a potential?
Right, and it's so similar to what we did last spring. And again, we have not, as an administrative team, met to really look at what the best strategy and use of these funds would be just yet. But as we move along, we will be working with the administrators in each building in terms of identifying budgets that potentially would not be spent just because the change in the teaching and the change in the learning model and things have changed to the point where maybe the budget would be used or not used a little bit differently. So we would again look to what would those strategies be, whether it would be trying to work again towards tightening up the FY22 budget, or pulling back in money into some of the revolvings like the building use, where again we're getting no revenue. So we'll look at various strategies and see what makes the most sense for the district and the budget.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you for taking care of this for us and keeping an eye on it and keeping us updated regularly. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. And now I think I'll do the chair report. Dr. Kavanaugh, do you want a screen share?
Yes, that's fine. I currently have 3 different presentations open, so just finding the right one.
So let's move forward. Yeah. So community engagement, I wanted to let folks know that next week on February 10th, we're going to be hosting, or I'm going to be hosting, a school committee chair roundtable. Just take a quick look. I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about a dozen area school committee chairs who are going to get together and just have an opportunity to exchange ideas and questions, and sort of lean on each other a little bit and see what we can learn from each other. So I'm excited for that to happen, and there will be a Zoom meeting, and hopefully it will be the first of an ongoing series. So we'll see. I will report back and let you know. And I will say to committee members, this first one is largely organizational, but going forward, as we have topics you'd like to maybe have brought forward, or maybe we have members attend as in and out. If you have a particular interest, we can talk about that at a time going forward. So I'm excited for it. That'll be great. Also, we had office hours last night, and we had several attendees. And if I were to characterize the office hours, I would say that we had several attendees who were very anxious about getting their kids back to school full time. These are families who have, I would say, many concerns, but predominantly the social emotional concerns that they cited regarding their kids, especially the younger kids, and the struggles that they're facing, just trying to deal with all the Zooming and the changing of the schedules. Even though hybrid, we've set up hybrid to be every other day, and it's sort of rhythmic. It becomes less rhythmic when there's a snow day, or there's quarantining or whatever. So they're unavoidable interruptions, but those interruptions are challenging, especially for the younger kids, or kids who don't do well with transitions, or kids who struggle and really rely on routines. So it's been a little tricky there. There were some, people are concerned about academics as well, but I think that, what at least one parent said is that we think we can deal with academics, that we can address, but it's really the concern about their sort of overall well-being that is primary. We had a lot of discussion about what's safe and what isn't safe. I think everybody on the planet is talking about what's safe and what isn't safe. I mean, there's just a lot of dialogue right now about where we are in the disease, with some people being vaccinated, and yet we have these new very virulent and contagious strains. And it's just this ongoing changing narrative, and there's a lot of conversation there. And parents raised a concern about the fall. Will we be open? They said there are parents who are looking at, do they need, if they think that it's absolutely necessary for their kids to be in full time, do they need to consider other schooling options like private schools? And those private school deadlines are coming up. And so they're concerned about where we sit with the fall reopening. And they want to know about the teacher vaccinations. And one attendee was looking for an update on school start times. Luckily, we have that on the agenda tonight. So, Dr. Hanoff, you could just, yeah. So, thinking, sort of taking that all in last night, and I will also ask Nancy in a minute for any comments, but taking that in, the narrative that we heard, it's been an extremely challenging year. We all know that, and a lot of families. For some kids, I've heard their kids are doing great. They actually like the every other day, but for many, many families, this has just been very, very challenging. And we hear you, and we know that, and we are very grateful for everything that people are doing to make the best of this year and get the most out of it. We just heard from our students, and we know that those are 2 examples out of 4,000 in our district who are adjusting and managing and making the best out of this year. So we really appreciate that. Our eyes are definitely fixed on reopening this year. And, what we said last night, while people really want this to happen yesterday, we just have to do the work. We have to do the work that Dr. Kavanaugh will probably update us on, of the reopening committee. There's not a real shortcut to get it done. And we'll hear more about that tonight. And, we expect to open full time for all students in the fall. Again, we have to do the work to make it happen. So, my personal feeling is it would be really nice to have clearer data from the top. If we had a little bit clearer information that was a little more consistent across the varying authoritative boards, CDC, WHO, American Academy of Pediatrics, et cetera, it would be really helpful. And if you, I am sort of encouraged by the new administration's new approach to dealing with COVID, and some of the messaging that we're hearing, a lot of the roadblocks, to vaccines and whatnot seem to be, being addressed and being removed. There seems to be momentum forward. So I'm encouraged by that. But it's, twice I've highlighted, there's a lot of work to do. We have to do the work. Nancy, did you have any other comments about last night's office hours?
No, I think you captured pretty accurately the conversation. I think, a lot of anticipation over the community survey that will be coming out, and people wanting to kind of hear what the results of that will be.
I will say that we also today received an email from a resident who is asking about time on learning for our 10th graders. And I have a typo there, sorry. The emailer cited the DESE student learning time dashboard, which is on the DESE website. And it was an email that we received later in the day, and I haven't really had a chance to look at the data. So we will talk about this in the future. Thank you. I need to let you all know that we met in executive session last week on January 28th, and we voted to approve executive session minutes from October 29th, 2020. And we voted to not release the minutes of October 29th, 2020. And we looked at the minutes of August 11th, 2020, but would like to edit them. And we did not get to the October 1st minutes that were on our agenda. So as I mentioned with the October 29th minutes, the reason that we addressed that in executive session still exists. So although we approved the minutes, we are not in a position to release them at this time. And the budget. So the select board met on Tuesday. For anyone who watched it, you would have seen our town manager give a nice budget update. As we talked about last week at our meeting, he discussed Governor Baker's draft budget that's showing an increase in local aid for Hopkinton from our projected 1% to now more of an 11% increase, which currently is looking at an impact on the need for us to use our one-time stabilization money being reduced. As he said last night or Tuesday night at the select board meeting, both the target draw from the school stabilization fund and the town stabilization fund will both be reduced by about 51% if we're going to go for the 2.5 tax impact, which would bring us closer to around $382,000. Again, as we talked last week, we didn't put a number on our town meeting article. It's a placeholder, and everything is fluid while revenue numbers come into focus. But at least it's a positive direction. He also cited that there's, regardless of the shift in our local aid and money from the state, we do still have a substantial future structural financial challenge, as we've talked about before. And we have our next budget advisory meeting scheduled for February 11th. And I will say that I approved warrants 21-048, 049, and 050, and they're in your packet. And I also approved the payroll warrant S21-016, which is in the packet as well. Any questions or comments? Okay, I think that's it for me then. And like I said, I just flip-flopped with Dr. Kavanaugh because I do think that Dr. Kavanaugh will be giving us a bit of a reopening update. So I will hand it off to her.
Okay. All right, so I did incorporate that tonight as part of my superintendent's report for February 2nd, 2021. As I typically do, I have included an enrollment update tonight. And just recently, the Growth Study Committee in town had asked me about increases in enrollment over a period of time. So we had been looking at some of the October SIMS data, and I thought it just interesting to note that since October of 2015, we had 3,463 students in our district. And then in October of 2020, we had 3,932. So over that 5-year period, we have increased our student enrollment by 469 students. This year alone, if you look at the very bottom of the screen on the right-hand side, our net increase this year is 82 students. And I know sometimes we think, oh, we didn't have as many as we predicted there would be. And still, we do have an increase for the 2021 school year. And we also have to remember that when Dr. Wagman predicted 4,111 at the end of this school year, it was a prediction made, including anyone who moves in between now and June 30th.
Excuse me, is it only me, or it looks like half of the slide was cut off on my view? Is it visible to others on the right? I was trying to follow your numbers but couldn't see them.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's looking like that.
I could see it, I think.
I can see it.
I can see this slide, but the previous one I couldn't see the far right. Okay, might be me for some reason. Yeah, what do you see in the furthest right column? 4014. Okay.
Right, maybe it's helpful. So to look at our K-12 enrollment over here is 3,867. If you add in the students who are Keefe Tech, Norfolk, Aggie, the charter schools and out of district, as well as our pre-K, we are right now at 4,014. So, and I apologize, Joe, that you couldn't see that. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
All right, I will go back to the present mode. We'll see how we do with it. So I heard from Mrs. DeBoe today that last night they had the preschool lottery. And she did note that I think she thought that this was kind of special. Historically, that was the greatest number of applicants we've ever had. We had 70 applications for 22 slots in the 3-year-old program and 54 applications for 13 slots in the 4-year-old program. So parents who are interested in taking a look at the results of that lottery, those results are posted online. All right, we have some really nice news from the Hopkinton High School Art Department. The subject matter leader for art sent this out this morning, Colleen Janino. And I'd just like to always point out that this year, again, we have had 3 of our students earn gold keys, 2 of our students earn silver, and there are also 7 honorable mentions there. So great work to the Hopkinton High School Art Department. Every year they get our kids and they get them to sort of the promised land. And, you know, art is one of those interesting subjects because lots of times we have students who are in the art department for, 2 years, 3 years. So they get very accustomed to the teachers that they're working with in that department. So hats off to them. And here we go with the reopening planning team. I think someone did mention surveys. The surveys are going to be released tomorrow. We do have a subcommittee or a working group just working on the surveys. The survey subcommittee got together, and on the 2nd, we looked at what those surveys looked like. And then on the 4th, I met today with the association presidents, the HTA and the 2 paraprofessionals. And so we're very comfortable with where the surveys are. And Linda Henderson has agreed to get those surveys out to the community tomorrow. So families can expect them, Hopkinton High School students can expect them, and faculty members can also expect to be getting a survey. I did want to talk a little bit about the process because I'm just a little bit concerned that parents are wondering what's taking so long, or is that group meeting? And we are meeting and doing an awful lot of work behind the scenes. And I think Mrs. Fargiano said it very well when she said there are no shortcuts. When you close a school down and you've been closed for nearly a year, then we still have a virus and we still have teachers who haven't been immunized. We have to think very hard about what a reopening would look like. So we started with a virtual data gathering process. We had 1 full meeting, and then the people who are leading the working groups, who are Tim Person for Building and Grounds, Susan Rothermick, Jen Parson, and I, have started to have some of those smaller working groups. So our whole group has met twice, once on January 20th, once on February 23rd, and our next meeting, is February 2nd, and our next meeting will be February 23rd. The survey committee has met twice. The trajectory of the virus committee has met once on February 1st. Our social distancing group will be meeting again on the 10th. The schedule committee will be meeting again on the 12th. Lunch on February 4th, and transportation February 5th. So all of these meetings are taking place, and some of these groups have 4 people on them, and some groups have many, many more people. What I've done on this slide is just to help you see who is actually making up the team. So you can see that there are many people from all walks of life, both in our schools and outside of our schools. So we've got, a couple of parents and nurses and our public health officials, principals, assistant principals, the presidents of our associations, central office personnel, and I think it's a really nice sort of cut of people across the district. We have also had a conversation recently about just bringing in some people who are experts in the field. So we have reached out to people in the community. One is a person who is a pediatrician with some SARS experience. We've got someone who has a PhD in virology and a hospital CEO, and all of those people have agreed to assist us with, just sort of providing data and attending meetings as they are able. So we're excited to have them on board. Our goal as a planning team is to collectively determine what needs to be achieved, what conditions have to be met prior to the reopening. We're also going to be thinking about when that reopening is feasible, and that really has yet to be determined. Our job right now is just to conduct the research and produce some findings. If you want to see who's on each one of those subcommittees, you can take a look at the top of this grid. You can see the 7 different categories that we have come up with. The blue line going across is the central office person who's in charge of the group. And then if you just look down the columns, you'll see the makeup of those. Just a quick update from the Building and Grounds group. The subcommittee did put together their driving questions, and they are in the process of answering things about passing in the hallways when you are doubling your population. What would the restroom schedule look like when you're doubling your population? Class size is interesting because in some cases you could double the population and have only 19 kids in the room. In other cases, you could double the population and have 31 kids in the room. So that's certainly something to think about. Where will we be having mass breaks when you have twice as many kids who need to do them? And how, if in any way, the cleaning requirements must change. The scheduling group members have generated again a list of questions that need to be answered prior to that reopening. They will be meeting on the 12th of February. The early look at things indicates to us that the middle school schedule will certainly be the most difficult to transform, going from a hybrid model to a full-time in-person model. In terms of lunch, they began with a shared Google Doc. They met today, and some of the things that they're thinking about now are, space and supervision. And I do know that people on that committee are really thinking outside the box. We have very limited space in the Hopkinton Public Schools. We have very high population in the Hopkinton Public Schools. So if we are thinking about space, we're going to have to be innovative about it. The social distance group, the members have generated that list of questions that will need to be addressed, just like all of the other ones have. We have a really nice compilation right now of all kinds of research-based resources that people have been adding to that folder. That group is charged with reading through them. And on Wednesday, the 10th, we're going to be rolling up our sleeves and thinking about that kind of question that says, is it 3 feet or is it 6 feet? And in truth, it's probably not an either or, but there's that kind of continuum that says what would be, in what ways are we going to be able to mitigate risk and get kids back in schools. Transportation, the current guidance that we have hasn't changed since June of 2020. And so tomorrow people will be meeting about that, and we may have to make some tweaks to transportation, certainly, if we want to get all of our kids into buses when we double our numbers. And finally, the trajectory of the virus group met. They have met as a whole group. They met on Monday night. And one of the articles that, if I could encourage everybody in the community to take a look at, is entitled Schools and the Path to Zero. It comes from a group of researchers from Harvard University, Tufts, Boston University, and Brown University. And I think that the information that's in there, it had originally been written last July, but it's just been recently updated. So I like the fact that it's very, very current, and that the people who are working on it are people who are sort of foremost thinkers in this field. Naturally, we have the CDC's considerations. We've got Hopkinton's dashboard. And then, not unlike the social distance group, there is a huge compilation of resources that everyone has put things in. everything from Kathy Bain put beautiful things in there, from school nurses to, things that are far more 30,000 feet. Just to update you on the COVID student case counts, we have had since September, being careful to articulate that, 21 students at the high school, 25 at the middle school, 7 at Hopkins, 11 at Elmwood, and 14 at Marathon, who have at some point in time between September and now tested positive. That is a listing of both hybrid and remote students. And then I thought I would include these pie charts. This is really interesting. One of my superintendent colleagues did this research. And the first question from 84 schools asked, in general, has your school district noted transmission at school? And it does not specify kid or adult, but you can see that the yes group is, sort of that's kind of a general yes. Yes, it has happened, and it's happened in ways that have been very noticeable or quite identifiable. The yellow grouping in there, 14.3, is occasional. And, I guess that would probably mean 2 or 3 kinds of transmissions. But when it comes to students, the Hopkinton Public Schools could very happily say that we would be part of that 77.4%. So out of 84 schools, 77% of them have not seen transmission in the schools. And we have seen transmission from adult to adult, but as a school district, we haven't seen student to student or student to teacher. This next one, though, might even be a little bit more interesting. So this one asked what the social distancing is that a particular school district is using. That kind of larger blue piece of pie at 8.3%, those are school districts that started at that 3 to 4 foot distance of social distancing, and they have stayed there. So they started that way in September, and they remain there today. Moving just slightly to the left on that pie, down that pie a little bit, you can see the orange. Those are districts that started at 6 feet, but then moved and transitioned to 3 to 4 feet. The yellow group is the group 27.4% started at 6 feet, but considering a 3 to 4 foot change up. And I would say that, in some ways that's probably where we are if we're genuinely thinking about reopening, and that, we don't know if that would be spring or fall. And if you look at the green group, those are all the people who started at 6 feet and they intend to remain there for right now. And we won't go through all of those smaller pieces of the pie. But 46% of schools started at 6 feet and are staying at 6 feet of those 84 districts that responded. And that is all I have. So I will stop sharing.
Committee members, what questions do you have?
Could I just start, Amanda, with saying thank you to the reentry committee. And I've seen Dr. Kavanaugh's guidance that just stating the difficulties is not going to be acceptable. So I appreciate that leadership, that she's advising the teams to work through the difficulties to come to solutions. And I think that's great. I'm hopeful that at the end of this, we will have a really clear set of criteria, because as I look back the last 6 months, I don't think that we've done a great job articulating what the opening criteria should be. As evidenced by mid-fall, when we had a low case count in town, a lot of people had the assumption that we would open. And then we found there's other reasons. So I'm hopeful we'll get a clear listing that we can then track against towards reopening, whether it's the 3 feet, the cafeteria, the buses, community spread, community case count, spread in the schools or not, vaccination status. I think there's a lot of assumptions out there, but if we can make a really commit to and really explicitly articulate those, I think that's going to help us. I also wanted to say, just as guidance, I think that while it would be nice to have, clear and consistent questions, clear and consistent kind of standards or guidance from health authorities, or it'd be nice if DESE or the governor said less than 6 feet is fine, go with it. We don't have those things, and we're not going to have those things. We shouldn't expect those. we're in an environment where we're having to make decisions with less than perfect data. And that requires leadership. It requires us sometimes being out in the forefront with other districts, leading the way. And I think we have the resources and the intellect to lead the way here. So I'm hoping that we'll see some of that output from this reentry committee. From what I see, it looks like it's off to a good start. It's not without contention. Of course, there'll be differences, but I think that we're headed in the right direction, so I'm hopeful.
Yes, we are too. I think we have a very good group, and I think folks are working really hard. And I think to your point about sort of that lack of data or lack of thresholds, they just don't exist. So I think what the report will end up being is sort of a cost benefit analysis, right? These are the risks, these are how we've mitigated them, and these are the things that we feel are important.
Dr. Kavanaugh, since you're talking about the report, the recommendations, I'm wondering if we can talk about timing a little bit. I noticed, I mean, I know you've kind of just gotten underway, kind of looking ahead at the calendar. We have a meeting on March 4th, which, you know, it's a month away. I know it's aggressive, but I'm wondering if you think the committee would be in a position at the March 4th meeting to come forward with recommendations at that time.
I think we could probably put together for you something that looks like a draft. And I say that because right now we have, as I said, so many resources that have all found their ways into folders. People are reading through them. And, you know, I can't imagine that there's going to be substantive change between, you know, today and March 4th. The one big change that is on the horizon is a vaccination for our educators, and that means everyone across the district. And you know, my own feeling is that if you could reopen your doors on March 1st, or you could reopen them on April 1st, and on March 1st people would not be vaccinated, but on April 1st they would be vaccinated, I would be 100% in favor of taking that time to ensure that the educators in our district have had the opportunity for vaccination. I feel like it's, you know, a sort of very fair way to take, you know, we had this conversation today in our survey group. And one of the things we said that was on March 10th, when we closed our schools, no one wore masks. So the risk was very high. In July, we had a much better sense of what does it mean to be socially distant and why is it important to be wearing that 3-ply mask. Right? And then we got to this place in the summer and we started to see things open up. So you could go to your hairdresser and you and your hairdresser might be, you know, only a foot apart for a substantial amount of time, and you're not her only client. So she's doing that all day and she's staying safe in that environment. Or we looked at other area school districts that have had their schools open at 3 feet, and what is it that they're doing to keep their kids very safe. So we have a lot of sense of what mitigates the risk now. And I think for me, that vaccine is that final step that we can take to ensure that the adults in our community have that opportunity to be immunized and feel much safer.
Yeah, I agree. So I don't want to rush you, but I want to rush you. So I don't know if we could maybe sort of target the March 4th, and you know, obviously you can update us as you go, but that seems like we're going to be wanting to hear sort of how things are shaping up in terms of recommendations, if that's possible.
We can hand over the information that we have at that point in time.
Excellent. Leah.
Yeah. So I'm probably the most cautious member of the board of the school committee. As many of you know, my father passed away just a few months ago from a one-time exposure to somebody who had it. I have been really happy with how cautious we have been, the cautious opening into hybrids, the fact that we were so careful, the fact that it was so thoughtful. When I look at these slides, I am once again fairly heartened. Some of the things that I was really worried about, I saw on those slides, such as the fact that our facilities are not at optimum population when they're full, right? They're overly full. And so things like restrooms and things like that, I think are really key to look at. So when I saw those boxes and I saw that, I thought that was incredibly good, because that has been a huge concern of mine. I assume that ventilation and things like that, when you have that many kids, are also being looked at, et cetera. And I think also the fact that you're looking into the other variants is really important as well. What does that look like? Does that change the projections for masks, et cetera? So I'm very heartened by how careful the group is being, and I really, really appreciate it. And I'm not in any rush, obviously, but thank you. I think even those of us who, you know, are a lot more on the very cautious conservative end can look at that list and say, okay, they are really doing their job and thinking carefully about this problem. So thank you.
Meg, I apologize. I wanted to tap you and ask you, as our very hardworking delegate to this effort, if you had any other things to share with us.
I wanted just to mention something I don't think we've emphasized yet, is the fact that we're not just considering this in a district-wide move to reopen, that it could be one school at a time. If you do the research, you'll find that the spread amongst, 4 through 8-year-olds is very low compared to, say, high school students. So we're being very careful looking at the data about that. I also think it's worth saying that one of the reasons why there's this interest in reopening is because there's an increasingly measurable damaging effect on children. And, I wish somehow we could incorporate more data about this into our conversations, because it's not just that parents need babysitters. I really don't think that's the issue, especially in Hopkinton. There are families who are struggling with work, but the mental health collectively of these children is suffering in ways that's going to take a long time to repair. And we need to start sooner rather than later. And we need to do this collectively. And, as adults, we have to kind of let go some of our own selfish needs and paranoias, and really think carefully about what will be best for the children. And I just think that's always worth repeating here, because the kids are the silent factor. Us grown-ups, we can talk about this forever, right? But the kids are the ones who are staying at home too much, putting on lots of weight, becoming more anxious. It is time. It's been almost a year. We have got to help these kids.
I really appreciate you saying that, because that is exactly the sentiment at office hours, for example, that as I mentioned before, it's the SEL side. It's not even the academics as much. It's the social, emotional, mental health, all those aspects of our kids, especially the young ones, I think. Yeah. Nancy, did you want to?
I did, I think excellent points all ahead of me. I also just want to throw in an appreciation for bringing in some experts we have within the community to bring in some of the science. I think it's really important as we look to consider when we're going to be able to reopen, that we be able to bring along the community. I know that there are, really diverse opinions on this, and I think it's important, whatever plans we put in place, that we be able to back it with science and be able to show that we're really considering all aspects of this. And I like what you said, Meg, about considering possibly not just a one size fits all for our district, but looking at where we're able to do things and, mitigate risk appropriately, and not force the solution for the whole district. If one solution works in one grade, but not another school, I think it's important to look at all of that too. So thank you to the committee. I know you're doing a tremendous amount of work in considering a huge amount of data, not all of which agrees with the other rest of the data. So thank you.
Thank you. We haven't actually recognized Ms. Parsons, Rothermick, who, in addition to everything else they do in their day jobs, are also doing this and so many other things, and leading committees and navigating this with your subgroups. And so thank you very much for that work that you're doing. I just had one other question about your superintendent report. Did I see 82 new students net this year?
Net, yes.
That's big. That's it. Did we add some kids recently? I feel like that jumped from our last report.
Well, we took a look at what was in Power School, and one of the things that we think had been happening is that we had parents who said that they were unenrolling their children and then didn't. So on our end, we were counting them as out, but they never left us. So I think that we might have really been, we thought we were at about 61, but it turns out that we were at like 81. Although it is true that Mrs. Carver, I think, got 7 new students in almost a week's time at the Elmwood School. So she was running orientations over there. She had so many new people, little people, I should say, as she would.
Well, I think I just, I spied that number, and I know we have talked about not knowing when enrollment will be in the fall. And I know that as I look at the media, and you see people all over the place talking about enrollments being down this year, and our enrollments maybe aren't up, maybe as bad as they maybe would have been, but they're up while others are down, and they're trending up. So, I know you're watching these numbers, but you put that little 82 there, and I was like, oh, gotta at least recognize that, because it could be very indicative of, more to come. And we, welcome the new students, but we just need to be ready.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you look at a number like 80, that can be 4 classrooms. And I mean, naturally, they're spread out over 13 grade levels, so you don't feel it like that. But just to put it in a different numerical perspective.
Yeah. Anything else on the superintendent report? Great. All right. So it brings us to liaison reports. Does anyone have a liaison report for tonight?
The growth study committee met last night, Amanda, and they have split into several different task groups. So we had report backs from each group. They're summarizing kind of some demographic information about Hopkinton and doing some benchmarking against other towns, so we can see which towns we compare against on these different demographic factors. And they're also looking at different open parcels and what it would mean if those were developed under existing zoning versus bringing a proposal to town meeting. For example, if the planning board were to decide that might not be in our interest to have it developed as it's currently zoned, and maybe we should look at having town meeting rezone it to some other classification. So different opinions being hit around, and different ideas, and all leading up to some presentation with the planning board and select board and us at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, the Hopkinton Freedom Team is working towards some planned events in Diversity Month, so in April. So look out for some cool, interesting events that will hopefully be around that time.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay. Office hours, we will continue to hold office hours. And let me just say, if you're a community member who has not attended office hours and you don't know what they are, when you see them posted, it's a Zoom session, it's drop-in, and it is a conversation. It's a chance for up to 2 members of the school committee to hear what's on your mind, whether it's, excitement about reopening, fear about reopening, questions about the budget, anything that sort of falls under our purview. Feel free to drop in and, keep an eye out for the upcoming dates. It's a great opportunity for us to hear firsthand what you are all concerned about, experiencing, etc. So that brings us to new business. And we have with us Ms. Jane Moran, welcome, who is here from the Upper Charles Campus Connector, Upper Charles Trail Committee, to talk about the Campus Connector. So welcome. I think you're muted. Jane, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. How's that?
Great, but now we lost your video.
I don't know what's going on here. That's all right. I'm here.
Okay, great.
Well, let me see if I can pull up the video again. Okay, there we go.
Perfect.
So if you can bring up the graphics, what our committee is interested in bringing you up to speed on the recent events of our engineering studies with the Campus School Connector. that's coming
Can I
from.
interrupt you for 1 second? Sorry, Dr. Kavanaugh, do you or Georgette have the,
I do. Yeah.
Okay,
If
awesome.
Jane is ready for them now, I can do it right now. Or if she'd like me to wait, I can wait.
No, I
Good.
can do the intro if you pull up the documents. Sure. So we found that once we get into the engineering part, which was the next step, we started off with the conceptual plan when we first went and presented to you over a year or so ago, and advised you that there might be some updates as we went forward with the plan. So we have studied, we got the award, and the engineers have actually gone on to the property, and they found one spot that needed a minor adjustment. And we had contacted HALT and Tim Parsons and the school committee, and several members of our committee went out there, and we did several site walks to see what would best work. And if you can pull up the map.
Sure.
So what we're talking about is number 1, which addresses this phase of it. So if you're looking at this map, you'll see a lot of green, and that represents the wetland areas. And there is a red dotted line that goes through the old railroad bed and crosses right in between, yep, that's the area, between the narrowest part of the wetlands area. And our engineers have decided that that's would be possible. What that would do would bring us close to the existing, I don't know if it's a ball field or a lacrosse field or what it is there, but it would come out just before the parking lot and cross through the woods, so that we're trying not to interfere with the playing area where the kids would go, and try and keep a buffer that would get us through that area, so that we wouldn't run into any wetlands issues. And then that would bring us right out to the center trail. So we would like to hear from you what your perspective is on that, and if you have any questions on that. And I'm not sure if Tim is on the video call tonight, but he was on the walk with us, and he seemed to be comfortable with what we were doing or suggesting at the time.
Okay. Just a point of clarification. The ball field that you're talking about, is that the Hopkins field? Dr.
Okay.
Kavanaugh, do you know?
It's the
Like near
field hockey field over there.
field 10?
Yeah, I think it's field hockey where the girls will typically practice.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, essentially it's a multi-use field, but for the most part, when I'm down there, I'll see field hockey girls there.
It's the grass field hockey field, which is, I think,
Yeah.
field 10. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Kavanaugh, do you have any concerns about this?
I don't. So I've been in touch with Mr. Person, and he and Donnie Freiberg, and Johnny is the building and ground supervisor. So I believe the day after Jane and her team went and walked that area, Tim and Donnie went down there and also kind of took a look at it, because there is sort of a triangle there that would get kind of clipped out of that field. I think that Tim and Don Freiberg said that they really didn't have concerns about that, but kind of going forward with this project, they are super eager to work with Jane and the team, just kind of, following where everything is kind of happening as the trails are built.
Yeah, and we're more than willing to take suggestions from the school committee and from the superintendent, whether you think that there might be a need for a small, like, black chain link fence, maybe 4 feet tall or something, just to keep the balls out of the field. I mean, out of the buffer zone. However, there is going to be probably a 10 or 15 foot buffer zone between the field and where the trail would be. And then a tiny spot, maybe 10 or 15 feet at the very end of the triangle would have to be kind of kind of moved a little bit so that the trail could go through. And we don't have any definite plan right now. This is just for the surveyors to go out there so that they can get a more definitive area of where it would go. And if there are more updates, we would certainly bring it before the school committee and the superintendent for updates or recommendations or whatever.
Thank you. I'm just kind of, I'm not really great at maps, and I know I did look at this before, but I keep getting lost in the map. Is it by J lot? Is it, I'm trying to think, is it J lot by field 10?
I'm not sure what the number is, Amanda. I'm sorry, I don't know the numbers, but do you know where the center trail comes out onto the loop road today?
Yes.
There's a little trail that goes down to Hopkinton Lumber.
Yep.
To the loop road. And the little red circle in the lower middle left of this slide, I think, is right at where that trail meets the loop road. Across the street from that, there's a little field. It's a one little isolated field and then a parking lot next to it. And then over on your right on the loop road would be that wooden pedestrian bridge coming next. So it's between the wooden pedestrian bridge and the center trail intersection with the loop road.
I gotcha. And would the field hockey field be, could it still be playable by the field hockey team? So I think it's JV mostly, I think, uses that.
I believe that that's what Tim and Don said.
Still playable. Okay. Members of the committee, any questions? Okay. I'm excited to have, advancement in the trails infrastructure. So I really appreciate all. I know this is a labor of love. This is a lot of work that goes into this, and I so appreciate it. I think personally, I would, unless Dr. Kavanaugh or Mr. Person had a concern, I will defer to you. I mean, to me, as long as the field remains usable by the teams that use it, and Mr. Person can recommend if he thinks we need a fence or not. I don't know how close. Not seeing any. There's a lot of woods there, so I really don't have a good visual for how important a fence would be. But if you don't have any concerns, I personally don't have any concerns. I think the rest of it looks pretty nice, actually.
Well, thank you. I know it continues to be a work in progress, and we will certainly keep you up to speed on any suggested changes that our engineers come up with. I just want to thank you all for your support and encouragement. I think it's going to be a great asset for the town in so many different ways that we can't even imagine right now.
Go ahead, Nancy.
So I just want to say it's been fun to watch this progress from the first time you came to share these plans with us, Jane, until now. It's exciting, and thank you so much for bringing this forward for our town.
I'm really excited, and especially for our special needs and our handicapped kids and, elderly people. We have tons and tons of running trails around town and other types of trails, but I think this is going to be a great asset for families and people with strollers and all kinds of accessibilities for things like that. More inclusive.
Kavanaugh, do you believe that we need a motion of a sort? There's none in the agenda packet. It just says TBD. Do you need us to take a vote, or are we just continuing with the previous vote that we had taken to endorse this project?
Right. So I think that you could vote to accept these recommended changes. But I don't necessarily know that it's anything that would stop the project from going forward. So, I mean, really what we're doing here is just trying to avoid some wetlands. I think Tim and Don Freiberg believe that cutting off that little corner won't be a problem. I do think that Tim is in favor of putting up that chain link fence as described. I know that he said that after talking to the engineers and to Jane, that the chain link fence would be something that the trails group would pick up the cost for. So I feel very comfortable with where we are, and that is field 10 that you're looking at.
Thank you. So I don't know. I mean, we could certainly take a motion. If we were going to do that, I would move to accept the proposed changes assuming that there are no showstoppers from, or no concerns from our buildings and grounds or superintendent, which we see none at the moment. But
I recommend we don't take a motion because this is still going through the engineer's work, and we already have a motion that allows them to keep going. So I don't want to have to make a motion and approve every time there's an adjustment. I think Jane's pointing out a proposed workaround that the engineers are still looking at.
that's good. That's a fair point. Yep.
Okay.
I want to make sure that Jane's able to move forward.
I'm fine with that. I thank you, Joe, for bringing that up. But yeah, it continues to be a work in progress.
Okay.
But we wanted to keep you up to speed on what we were doing.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your coming, and come back. Keep us informed, and good luck as you progress with the engineers. And I'm excited. I live on the other side near Holliston, so the idea of being able to safely,
Yeah,
use non-car transportation to get across town at one day is just
exciting.
it's a great vision.
All right.
It's
Well, thank
great, Jane. Thank you. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. And have a good, and thank you for all the great work you guys are doing too. I know it's tough times. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Have
Thanks,
a good
Jane.
night. Yeah, bye-bye.
All right. I think we have Mr. Keller with us now, and we are moving on to the middle school overnight field trips. Welcome, Mr. Keller. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you all. Thanks for
The floor
having me
is
here.
yours.
Appreciate it. As you have in your packet there, it is time for our annual discussion on overnight field trips for Hopkinton Middle School. The first is our intent to travel to Nature's Classroom in Charlton, Massachusetts. This is a 4-day and 3-night overnight field trip. It is an environmentally based educational experience. Our focus is to develop relationships among students, between students and staff, to help students with teamwork and appreciation for individuality, and it's all done in an environmentally aware fashion. So students are in field groups throughout the day. They have an opportunity to sign up for special interest classes, which are led by Nature's Classroom teachers. And each evening there are a variety of activities, which include night hikes, science experiments, and the like. And each night is capped off with a night sing. And so the cost for the trip is $350 per student. This is actually, will be over 25 years that we've gone to Nature's Classroom. We had a nice consecutive string going. Of course, it was snapped in the current year because of COVID. We don't know, of course, where we're going to be in the fall, but we still feel as though it's important to plan for the trip and hope for the best. I do want to point out that in your packet, the dates that are there, A, were incorrect because I think that had us going on a Sunday, so I apologize for that error. But B, I actually got a timely phone call today from John Santos, who's the executive director of Nature's Classroom, who actually requested a change from the original date, which actually works better with our schedule. So the actual proposed date for this trip would be October 12th. So that's a Tuesday. So Tuesday, October 12th through Friday, October 15th. So that's 4 days and 3 nights at an estimated cost of $350 per student. And so I'm here with Intent to Travel, seeking your approval for that Intent to Travel. And I believe if I have the pattern down, I think then in June, I would come before you and ask for final approval.
I'm glad one of us has the pattern down, so that's good. Good to know. Okay, colleagues, what questions do you have?
Just curiosity, do they have a modified program right now with COVID, or is it all or nothing? So if the program can't go as specified in the packet, then the kids wouldn't be able to go at all? Or have they figured something out?
As of right now, Nature's Classroom so Nature's Classroom as the organization had, I think, about a dozen sites. We used to go to Colebrook, Connecticut, and about 4 years ago, we changed to Charlton just because of its proximity to Hopkinton. And so the Charlton site, it is my understanding, is kind of an all or nothing. They have not been having school visits there. In my conversation today with John Santos, they have sold several of their sites to another organization, which is called Nature's Classrooms. And so that organization I had conversations with, they are doing Nature's Classrooms on wheels. So they're actually traveling to schools to do kind of a modified experience. And we've looked at the program, and although there's some benefit to that, I think that a lot of the things that our science teachers are doing, a lot have done with our students are kind of, that's kind of a replica. So I think there's a lot of value and benefit to what we do on site at Charlton, and so I didn't feel like that was a tremendous value. So my understanding is the original Nature's Classroom based in Charlton is not doing any modified situation. Having said that, Leah, I think one of the things I talked to John about was the potential for, if we're not back to normal in October, we could look at sending students in kind of waves to have a minimal number of students there, and making sure that we're keeping physical distancing in place.
Yeah, that would be really nice to be able to have them have the experience while still being able to stay safe if we get to that point and we have to worry about that. So I'm glad you're talking about that. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Nancy?
I am a huge proponent of Nature's Classroom. I think it's a great program for our kids. I do have some hesitation just in terms of the not knowing what's going on with COVID. Is there, and I know because this is just the preliminary, that it will come back when we hopefully have a better sense of how COVID will look in the fall. If when it comes back in June, it looks like we may not be able to go, or may not be able to go in a modified way, is there any consideration of doing this as a spring program, if that would potentially make a difference to allow it to continue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Nature's Classroom over the years has been incredibly flexible with us. I think we were one of the first schools to work in such a way with them. We're certainly my understanding is they're the largest school that goes there. So they, over the years, you may remember that there was a bed bug situation probably 3 or 4 years ago. And so we were able to flex our dates at that time. Then there was Triple E, and we wound up moving later in the school year. So, it's my understanding that there is no doubt about it, they would be flexible with us and move to the spring or delay until we need to do that. I mean, having said that, I will say, like all organizations that are focused on travel, I think they are probably struggling right now. So I'm hopeful that they'll still be in a position to host schools, but who knows?
Fingers crossed.
Meg?
I'm so glad you persevere through bed bug infestations and Triple E and COVID. That's great. I'm really sorry my son didn't get the chance to do it this year, but I love the thought that you'll be doing it going forward with more kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg. It's definitely a loss, and we've talked a variety of ways about trying to make it work, and obviously there's nothing we can really figure out to make it up for those students, but it is a valuable experience, and I am hopeful that we'll get back there.
Do you know if, I don't know when you start collecting money for this, but do you know if they will they refund? Do you know what their refund policy is? I know we ran into that with other trips with COVID that were international, so different ballgame, but still.
Yeah, we haven't had, I actually don't know. That's a good question, Matt. I don't know what the refund policy is. I will say, though, that with Nature's Classroom, we don't start collecting money until September. Actually, I think it's usually like mid-September. So traditionally, we have our back to school night in which we say this expense is forthcoming to parents, and we communicate that over the summer. And so it's usually in September, but we actually don't pay money to Nature's Classroom, if I remember correctly, until the trip is complete. I think we might do, that's my recollection, because I know that we were still paying well after we had attended, so.
Let's hope you can go. I really hope you can go. I think that would be great. And, just because I've been starting to look at the forms, and yours is the first to come forward, is this the form, or is the next form that comes forward with final approval the one that will talk about whether or not we need substitutes to help accommodate the trip?
Yeah, that my recollection is that's the final
next
approval.
one.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll hold that question. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Oh,
please?
sure. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Mr. Keller. It is a great program, so thanks for continuing it. As for, it really helps define the identity of the class too. And I understand we couldn't do it in the fall, but you're going to continue next year for the 6th grade, I presume, right? Is there a
Yes.
way to also just have it for next year's 7th grade? Is there a way to look at letting them have this experience a year later than usual?
There is. That is a possibility, and that's something we're certainly exploring. I mean, my conversation today with John Santos is the first conversation we've had in quite some time, and so that is something we kind of just initiated. So that's something I wanted to talk to Dr. Kavanaugh about, and I know that there is, this intent to travel needs to come in on a certain date. So I wanted to follow up with her and have that conversation. My conversation was late this afternoon with John, but yes, that's something that I want to look into and see if we can get students who missed it that potential experience.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to make a motion to support Nature's Classroom and hope that it goes forward?
So moved.
Motion by Meg,
Second.
second by Joe, and I'll take a roll call vote. Leah,
Aye.
Meg,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Nancy,
Yes.
and I'm an aye as well. Thank you very much for bringing that forward.
Thank you. So the next item is also around overnight field trips. And so this has a slightly different feel to it. So it's our grade 8 overnight field trip. And so I think many of you know that for many years we have held a overnight field trip for our grade 8 students in June. In 2017, we began going to New York City. Prior to that, we were going to Washington, D.C. So even before COVID, this is something that we talked a lot about, thought a lot about the value of this trip, the cost of this trip, both in terms of dollars to families, as well as the amount of planning, timing, execution, missed classroom time. So I'm at the point, and as you may remember, I think 5 years ago, I brought together a parent and student committee, and we looked at it at this trip. So I am at a place now, after having talked about this and thought about this, especially in this current COVID environment, where I feel as though the time has come to discontinue our grade 8 overnight field trip. And I feel this way for really 4 reasons. The first of which I just kind of mentioned briefly, and that is the cost of this trip. So over the course of 3 years, a middle school parent who might just have one kid in 6th, who then goes to 8th grade, and we know many of our families have multiple kids over the course of multiple grades. You're talking for just one student in those 3 years, a little over $1,100 in those 2 trips. The second reason is the number of students who haven't attended this trip over the years continues to increase. And although our guidance counselors, myself, the assistant principals have done a lot of work trying to work with families to make sure that nobody is excluded, the average percentage of students who haven't attended has increased to a high of 13% in recent years. We've kind of averaged between 10 and 13% of students who aren't attending. And that is problematic for a couple of reasons. Number one is we feel badly for the students who don't attend, where the majority of their classmates are attending. The second reason is, we're creating essentially kind of two different curricula. So the students who are in New York City experiencing something that their teachers have been preparing them for a couple of weeks for those experiences, and then those students who don't attend and the experience that they're getting back in the classroom. And as much as we try and make it special and unique for those students who don't attend, it is very different, and it is not as special and as unique as those students who go in. The third reason is the time out of the classroom. So we look at what has happened the past 2 years, and time on learning is at a premium. And so thinking about the number of days that students aren't in the classroom and are missing, that doesn't feel right to be missing those number of days out of the classroom. And then the fourth reason is something that Amanda alluded to in the Nature's Classroom piece, and that is substitutes. So our goal is to have teachers attend the field trip because they are best at working with groups of students and leading students through, whether it's Washington, D.C. or New York City, and making sure that they lay out the expectations. And though parent volunteers are wonderful, and we've had great parent volunteers over the years, there's nothing like having a teacher who knows the students, who have that connection with students. And so in order to do that, we have grade 6 and grade 7 teachers who attend this trip. They want to attend because they want to experience that with students. And we want them to attend because, as I just mentioned, our preference is to have teachers. But what that means is that those grade 6 and grade 7 students are having a substitute teacher teach their classes. And although we love our substitute teachers, they aren't a certified teacher to be teaching that curriculum. And so it's all these factors. I look at the amount of work, and everybody's willing to do the work when we think that there's a really positive experience, and there is, but the amount of work that our nurses do to prepare in terms of allergies, to prepare students for all the different factors and working with families. I'm at a point where I feel like we want to create a positive experience for students, and we are looking at some exciting opportunities for kind of day trip plannings, but feeling like the time has come and gone for an overnight field trip, at least currently. And so that's my statement on the graded overnight field trip.
Okay. Colleagues, what questions do you have?
Amanda, could I start? I would say I understand Mr. Keller's explanation for sure. I wouldn't be comfortable, endorsing canceling this trip until I see what its replacements are in terms of day trips. I think it's easy for us to underestimate the level of adaptability that our kids, especially in middle school, I don't have anybody in middle school, but I remember the times, the adaptability our kids have displayed. It's at a cost. I mean, they're emotionally without a lot of things to look forward to. And these trips are something to look forward to at the end of the year. It, for many, keeps them going throughout the year, knowing there's a big trip coming at the end of the year. And I wouldn't be comfortable in this environment announcing any kind of cancellation of the trip until there's something to put in its place. So I think you mentioned there's some day trip options. I would rather see what those are first, and at the same time communicate what we're doing instead. That way you don't have to even communicate it as cancellation. You get more of a change. We're having a couple of day trips instead this year. It would still be legitimate and something to look forward to. But pulling something out could be detrimental, I think.
Mr. Keller. Are you all set, Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from others too. I never want to be the only and definitive voice. It's just my opinion.
Luckily for a committee, you don't get to be the definitive voice, so that's okay. Mr. Keller, I'm wondering if you can discuss, has there been discussion among like school council or, at a principal's cabinet? I can't remember what advisory bodies there are for you, but has there been a discussion among the school members at all about this?
No, actually, to be honest with you, this is, as I was preparing for intent to travel, it's been something that I've been talking about internally, kind of exclusively internally this time around. So this is my first kind of proclamation of this sort, other than my conversation with Dr. Kavanaugh prior to this point. So as I said, 5 years ago, we looked at a lot of different options to Joe's point. About day trips and considered looking at day trips. And at that time, we decided to move from DC to New York City. But no, we haven't begun discussion. The only thing we've done officially at this point is cancel this year's New York City trip, and parents are aware of that. But that's kind of where we stand at this moment.
Okay, yeah, that obviously makes sense. What other questions do we have?
I wanted to say I totally understand the thought process behind this. I am a little bit in agreement with Joe because my son did the trip to the Washington, D.C. and the one thing that stuck with him was being able to go into his congressman's office and seeing his congressman in his office and meeting him and learning what he did on a day-to-day basis, right? So there were all these cool things, but that was the one thing that was big for him. And to me, that seems like a pretty incredible thing. At his age, I would never, I grew up in Miami. To me, Washington, D.C. was, it could be in another country, right? And so the idea that my son actually got to experience that situation and got to see for himself how close to him his congressman really is was amazing. Now, I know that the congressmen have offices here. I know there are other ways that kids can have that kind of experience. But I would love to hear alternatives that would give the kids sort of those experiences as well. I don't know. I don't know that I'm against voting for the proposal or anything. I'm just saying that I agree that I would like to see the alternatives come forth, because I think there was a lot of good in that experience.
I love that your kids were excited about the congressman. My kids were excited about fast food and fountain drinks, like everywhere on the bus, the bus part. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I did something wrong, maybe. I'm not sure, but. So Nancy, go ahead.
I can see kind of both sides of the coin here. On the one hand, I do have 3 kids who have been on the 8th grade trip, 2 who went to New York, 2 who went to Washington, and 1 who went to New York. I know the cost of both trips as it escalated was difficult for a lot of families, and that's always a concern to me. I also know the other side of that for many kids, this is a huge highlight of their 8th grade and their middle school experience. That said, in terms of purview, I don't know that we have the purview. We have the purview to approve or not approve a proposal that's brought forward, but I don't think we have it's under our purview to say that the school must take an 8th grade trip. I think that probably is more school based.
Yeah, I'll concur with what Nancy just said. Just so we know what's on the agenda tonight, we were really looking for you to approve the Nature's Classroom trip.
And yeah, like I said, I understand we don't have control. I just wanted to state that it had been a good experience, and that knowing that there's alternative options out there for the kids would be really nice.
I appreciate the fact that with up to a 13% group that doesn't attend, you are taking a second look, because I know how important this trip is to you too. It's been a really important trip to the curriculum. I also know the curriculum has changed a bit in middle school for moving more to civics, and it's just a little bit of a different curriculum in general. So I can see where marrying up the trip that you had done with the curriculum as it is now is tricky. And, we are a committee that definitely values inclusivity and making sure that everyone can participate in our solutions. So, I 100% understand what is making you take a second look. So I appreciate the thoroughness and the fact that you're looking at so many factors. Obviously, you have a lot on your mind. It's not something I was like, oh, hey, let's just skip it. I think there's a lot on your mind. I mean, my sons, like everyone else, really enjoyed this sort of rite of passage trip, but there are probably other ways to get at that. So I wish you luck in that. And hopefully you will, my hope is that you, as your thinking evolves, can bring in some voices from school council and students, and maybe even some past participant students who are, freshmen who maybe have recent feedback and so forth, just to help round out the feedback on wherever you go with this.
Thanks, man. Well, not the freshmen because they didn't get a chance to go, but
right.
But the others. but just a couple things I want to kind of respond to. I think that Leah, we 1 year, I don't remember what year that was off the top of my head, but we were able to go to DC and go and see, I believe it was Congressman Markey, and we also were able to see Joe Kennedy So that was a really positive experience. Having said that, there are organizations that we have worked with in the past, and we've begun working with close up as we made the move to the civics curricula, where they can do a lot of things with and have a lot of connections with politicians, where they can come to the schools and we can do different types of assemblies and have those experiences. And we actually have done that with, with the support of our Desire to Inspire group and Tim Kilduff and a group of others who have kind of connected us in those ways. So I think there are still some opportunities. Having said that, that's not a 8-hour bus trip that a lot of kids really always enjoyed. So there are definitely some things. And so my first, I guess my thinking about this was initially to make you all aware of, obviously we're not doing the trip in June, but I want to make you all aware of where our thinking is at this point, but certainly to kind of reignite a group of people, as I did a couple of years ago, around knowing that this is kind of the decision moving forward, and how can we still make a positive outgoing experience for our 8th grade students that isn't going to be overnight, but it can still be a memorable one.
We're lucky to have principals who are in the middle of everything else, thinking so deeply about things like this as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
I do
It's
want
great
to
to see you.
Dr. Kavanaugh, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say, I do want to thank Mr. Keller, because I know that he has been turning this over in his mind, and I know heart, for a very, very long time. And it's been a super difficult decision to make, but not one that was made without care. So thank you.
Okay. Well, I think.
Thanks, everyone.
I think we're
appreciate
good, right?
Do you need a vote for Nature's Classroom?
We did.
We did that.
Oh, sorry,
We did
that's so long ago I lost it.
We did that. We endorsed Nature's Classroom. Yeah.
It's no longer Groundhog Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a great evening. Thank you for joining us.
Goodbye, Mr.
Thanks.
Keller.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, Marathon School Gift Account, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, yes, we have a few easy items here. The Marathon School Gift Account, they need for you to endorse or accept $207 from Hannaford Grocery Stores.
Excellent.
I make a move to accept it.
Second.
Motion by Meg, second by Nancy. And Leah, how do you vote?
Aye.
Meg,
Aye.
Nancy,
Yes.
Joe,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Thank you very much. And next up, Elmwood School Gift Account, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Almost the same sort of thing. This is $36.30 from Box Tops for Education. And again, just to approve that for the Elmwood Gift Account.
I love that Box Tops just keeps on chugging. I feel like that program has been around for a while doing great things. So is there a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Great. Motion by Meg,
Second.
second by Leah, and a roll call vote. Leah,
Aye.
Meg,
Aye.
Nancy,
Yes.
Joe,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Thank you very much. That brings us to Unit C, Paraprofessional, ABA at Elmwood, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, so I am making this request on behalf of Dr. Zaleski. She is looking to hire an ABA para from now until the end of the school year. We have had move-ins, and the needs of these particular children are seemingly requiring the presence of an ABA para at the Elmwood School. She does have a funding mechanism for this. It will be funded through the operating budget and then offset by circuit breaker. And because it's only half the year that we'll be hiring this person, the cost of the person is actually $16,585.
Are there any questions?
Question, is that then going to be folded into next year's budget as well? Will that need to be added into?
My guess is that it will be, it's obviously based on student need, but I would imagine that, the children who have moved in will be still with us next year.
So important to meet the needs of the kids we have.
It is.
Any other questions? Okay. Motion. Anyone want to make a motion to approve the additional BA paraprofessional for the remainder of the fiscal year 21 for Elmwood?
So moved.
Motion by Meg,
Second.
Second by Leah. And how do you vote, Leah?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
Joe?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. And thank Dr. Zaleski for all that she does to support all the different needs of our kids. So thank you. School start time change report, Dr. Kavanaugh. I think there's community interest in this topic, and I'm excited for an update.
Okay, let me pull up some slides. Just very quickly. Okay, so just making a very quick presentation tonight on the proposed start time change. I know that there are a lot of people who are wondering, why are you doing this and why are we doing this now? We have several reasons why we're doing it. And I think that we shared this information with parents when we sent out the surveys. So we noted to parents that, we have very frequently heard from our secondary parents, middle school and high school folks who are telling us that, they'd love for their kids to be starting school later than they currently do. And for those of you who don't know, our kids are at the middle school and the high school no later than 7:25 and heading off to those first period classes. And research about sleep studies will tell us that, that's not really the time when our kids are probably, their brains are best poised to learn. And yet we've been doing it for many, many years. And I think we've been doing it because historically that's how secondary schools have worked. You know that many of the schools around us have stretched out their start time so that they're starting sometime around 8 o'clock. I think the latest one that we know of is in Ashland. They start at about 8:30. We are proposing something around that 8 o'clock time, and we're doing it that way because we want to be able to run buses for the elementary kids too, and we don't want the elementary kids standing out in the dark at 6:55 a.m. because they have to get on buses before their secondary counterparts. So it's just something that has been, very long recommended, and other districts are doing it, and there's science behind it. So those are sort of the academic reasons why we're thinking about this. The second reason that we're looking at it is due to athletics. As I just said, so many other districts have stretched out their start times that if they're not getting out of school until 2:30 or 2:45, when our kids are getting out of school at 1:52, there's a lot of downtime for them before they go to athletic contests. And certainly they can, go after school and see a teacher if they like. But for the most part, our kids are they've got that downtime. So why not take that time that they have in the afternoon and just transfer it to the morning and get more aligned with the districts around us so that, when the athletic contests begin, say, for example, at 3 o'clock, they're pushed out a little bit later. So that means that dinner will start later, homework will start later, the extracurriculars in your households will start later. So it might just make better sense to kind of be in line with other districts in terms of athletics, but also so that when our kids are doing that homework at night, they've got a little bit of extra sleep in time in the morning. And then finally, the last reason is because of transportation. One of the things that we're thinking about is just doing 2 bus runs. So if we had a K-5 bus run and a 6-12 bus run, it would probably make transportation a whole lot easier and maybe even a little more streamlined. If we can make busing run with a little more efficiency, that would be great. Our high school, middle school group would be starting around 8 o'clock. So the buses would be dropping them off then. And then the buses would have a full hour to leave the high school, middle school complex, get out all across Hopkinton, pick up kids, and then get them to Marathon, Elmwood, and Hopkins School by 9 o'clock. So that's pretty much what we're looking at. Just so you know also that, so it will impact the high school, middle school because they'll have just a little bit later start time, moving from 7:25 to 8 o'clock. And it will also impact Hopkins because they will have a start time that moves from, roughly just a little bit after 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So that'll be pretty much pushed out pretty far for them. Elmwood and Marathon wouldn't be changing. So what I can show you here are some of the responses that we received. So the 198 responses came from teachers across the district. And just so you know, 79 high school people responded, 46 middle school, 46 Hopkins, 12 at Elmwood, and 24 at Marathon, and 1 faculty member at the White House. And then in terms of parents, we got 1,713 responses. When we asked them where their children went to school, so 724 said they had a high school student, 805 said they had a middle school student, 501 said they had a student at Hopkins, 369 at Elmwood, 331 at Marathon, and 4 in the 18 to 22 program at the White House. So I put all of these on the same slide so that you could kind of see them all together. On the left-hand side, you see faculty responses in pie charts. On the right-hand side, you see parent responses in pie charts. On the left-hand side, we asked faculty, if you work at the White House or the high school or the middle school, do you have any concerns about the change in start time to roughly 8 o'clock? So of 127 responses, about 71% of the people said no, they had no concerns with it. 29% of the people said yes, they did. Now, scooting down to the next pie chart, you're going to see a very big change in that. So it feels like the secondary people almost kind of felt this coming. You know, that's kind of a lot of what I got in the comments. But if you look at the Hopkins teacher responses, it was a perfect 50-50 split. Of the 54 teachers at Hopkins who answered this survey, 27 of them said they had a problem with that change to approximately 9 o'clock, and 27 of them said no, they didn't have a problem with that. So, you know, that's a place for us to think about things just in terms of teacher need. You know, I guess as families, teachers are very careful to set up schedules that work for their families. So someone's dropping children off maybe at school or at daycare and have to pick them up again at the end of the day. And so, you know, it could be a shift for them that impacts their family life. On the right-hand side, these are the questions that went to parents. We asked parents who had students at the White House, the high school or the middle school, if they had concerns about a change to 8 a.m. 90% of those parents said no, they didn't. 10% of the parents said that they did. So it's almost overwhelmingly popular among parents. They support this change at the secondary level. We asked the same question from Hopkins parents. We had 898 responses, and 86.4% of those parents said that they didn't have any concerns about switching the Hopkins start time from just a little after 8 to 9 o'clock. And almost 14% of them said that they did. So there's a little bit of thinking to do there. And I know that we'll want to go through and really read all of the comments that they left for us very carefully. And that is pretty much all I have in terms of information, and happy to answer questions for you.
Who would like to start? Leah? Oh, no? Okay.
No,
Well, I guess I have a question, if you don't. I guess I have a few questions. I think my first question is there a date by which we have to, in order to implement in the fall, we would have to do that this year so that we could do whatever negotiating we need to do with the bus company? And, you know, is there sort of logistically a hard deadline that we would need to drive the process to? Do we know?
So what Mrs. Rothermick and I have been thinking is that it's 3 weeks out now until we have another school committee meeting, and we would be making a decision in the next 3 weeks because she'll need to start designing bus routes. And I can certainly let her speak to, you know, the process of bus routes and talking with Conley Bus.
Yeah, so as I said in a previous meeting, beginning March 1st is when I start designing bus routes. Also at the next school committee meeting, you will also hear who we're moving forward as winning the bid for our aftercare program. And so they will also be putting out to parents about the aftercare program. So the time of the school will become important for that as well. So a lot of things will happen at that next school committee meeting that really kind of set us up for the future. You know, so parents will need to be able to start to plan for their next school year. The bus routes need to be planned. So it is important for this decision to be made.
And just one more like sort of factual question. Is there a monetary value set, a savings or anything, is this something, a decision that is supported by savings of some sort that we're anticipating, or are we expecting it to be roughly cost neutral and that's not really a factor?
So for the next school year, it is cost neutral. But when we do put this out to bid again, our structure right now is our 2-tier and our 3-tier are the same cost per day, and only a 1-tier has a reduced cost. But that's the structure of what we have. So when we put out a new bid where it is only 2-tier, have that potential of having, the different cost for that. There is a savings, obviously, to the vendor in terms of wear and tear on the vehicles and fuel. So it does make a difference. But there is no imminent budget savings for the next year.
Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, anybody have any feedback, questions, comments?
I think this is great. And, it was nice to see the data about the parent support of this move. And I just think it's better for the kids. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I completely agree with Mike. I think it's healthier for the children. I think we've seen Westboro do the move and everything seems to be going smoothly there. So we do have other school districts that have the same sort of experience and have had positive change. So I really appreciate the direction we're going.
So I would also echo that, and just I think this is a great solution on a number of different fronts to be able to honor the science behind not having adolescents going to school quite as early. Also, I don't think it's helpful or healthy to have any age kids getting on the bus in the dark. So I appreciate that this is a solution that would not have our elementary kids getting on the bus at 6:30 either. It also seems like a nice step to really kind of look at our transportation pieces after school and kind of get things moving forward. And I also was thinking as I was looking at the Hopkins results, those parents all know that the 6th grade is around the corner.
Joe, did you have any comments?
No, thanks for the update and good luck with the progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm the only outlier that has hesitation. I love this solution. I worry about the pacing. So, for me, I think the solution is a good one. I think 2-tier busing would be, could be really nice. I do wonder what the ride times will look like, how we accomplish that. Do we actually send one bus to 3 schools, or do we take more kids on a bus from each school? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Like, would the ride times change?
So if you think about what the combination would be the Hopkins and Marathon students would ride together, and Elmwood, being geographically further away from the campus, would ride on their own, similar to how Hopkins rides on their own now. So no, the buses would not go to 3 different schools. You lose a lot of time, and I say a lot of time, but so the Marathon kids get on, they're on the bus, they have to ride over to get the Elmwood kids. It's more efficient to go to Hopkins and get the students there back and forth. Geographically, of course, it is much quicker. So it's not a look at trying to increase student ride times, but it does give you the time that when you leave the middle school and high school and you have to go to the furthest outreaches of Hopkinton, that in and of itself can take a significant amount of time. So it really reduces the capacity that you can stop and get kids on the bus. Now, each stop, I think the doors are open for, maybe less than 30 seconds. So a stop in and of itself is not a significant amount of time. But just the travel time to get out to your first stop and start your run is significant. And when you only have a half hour, you're 10 minutes out and then 10 minutes back, you don't have a lot of time, and our buses are really not filled at capacity at all.
Yeah, so I like the solution. I guess I just feel like the community is hearing this detail. It has been teased and they've been surveyed, but they're hearing it tonight. We have one more meeting at which we would have to make a whole lot of decisions. So I guess I'm wondering, is there a way to have a public forum at the beginning of the next meeting so that we could hear directly from residents? I know there was at least one person who dropped into office hours last night looking for this update. I'd be curious as you look at the survey data at the 50-50 Hopkins faculty split, understanding more what that's all about, and just making sure that we're being thorough without grinding the process to a halt. I guess clearly I'm an outlier, so that's fine, but I just am a little concerned with the pacing. I really love the idea. The 6:30 a.m. on the bus is tough.
So I appreciate what you're saying, Amanda. I would wonder if maybe we could, in order to help meet the deadline of transportation to make this decision, if there would be an appetite to add something in before the next meeting, to have some kind of a public not hearing, but a public forum, or allow additional feedback to come in.
I was encouraged that there was a survey that went out to all the families, and that Dr. Kavanaugh mentioned they're reading through all the written in comments, because where there were questions that said, I have concerns, there was an opportunity to comment there. I can't imagine we would get additional new information that wasn't already covered in those comments. And I don't want to get in the way.
I agree.
Agreed, although we wouldn't be able to, we're not going to see all those comments. We wouldn't be able to hear directly from the community. Certainly we can hold office hours in here.
It's more administrative and operational, so I don't think I need to hear, as long as our administration works through those details.
Meg?
I agree. I feel like the survey did a fine job of vetting how people in the community felt. And, if you want to hold office hours next week with an option for people to talk about it, that seems fine, but I don't think we have so much else on our plate, and this has been a long time coming. So I don't think we need to extend the discussion much longer, truly.
So what do you think about the idea of, instead of adding a meeting, even though we love all these meetings we have, I'm wondering if we can start the meeting on the 25th with an opportunity, a public forum, or an opportunity for public interaction on this, similar to the way the select board often does, some of their topics that come up, they'll have a public forum for exchange, so that we can at least take that into account as we cast our votes.
My guess is it's going to get a fair amount of traction, just people that feel strongly about it. Even people who have responded to the survey that would want to be heard again. So we would want to make sure, if we're opening that up, that we allot enough time for people to be heard.
I would want to know what our objective is. We have the feedback already, and our administration is working through it. If it's a matter of making sure people are heard, they've been heard through the survey and their responses. Is there additional information that we're looking for in order for you to make a decision, Amanda?
The only feedback we've received via email or whatever, as this topic has come up on a couple of school committee agendas, are questions like, you know, I have 3 kids in 3 different schools, and how do I do parent pickup? Or, you know, sort of questions at levels of detail that might not be, you know, might not come to mind for me. I don't know really what I don't know. So I guess because I think this does impact, it is operational, but it impacts families, it impacts kids, and it impacts teachers. And we've got a 50-50 split at Hopkins. And, you know, I think I 100% think this is a good thing to do. I just want to make sure that we, you know, are clear. Now, I wasn't surveyed because I don't have a student right now in the district. So maybe the survey covered it. But I just, typically when we do a change like this, I think we would have an opportunity to hear a little bit more from the community. That's my only thought. But I'm only one person. I'm certainly willing to entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion.
I thought you would.
Approve of this monumental move towards a start time for the health of our community.
A motion by Meg.
Second.
Second by Joe. And I'll take a roll call vote. Leah.
Aye.
Meg.
Aye.
Nancy.
Yes.
Joe.
Aye.
And I'm a no. So that's 4 in favor and 1 opposed, and it passes. Thank you very much for bringing this forward. And I'm excited. I think for those kids who are getting up at 6:30, they're going to appreciate this.
And please do work through all the details. We're depending on you, Susan and Carol.
Well, yes, and I would add that some of those details that, like Amanda, you mentioned the questions about the 3 schools would come out as part of an FAQ or something after the fact, just to make sure that people have the ability to have the tools of what they need to move forward.
Excellent. Okay, that brings us way over time to, once again, superintendent's formative evaluation focus indicators. Do we have the fortitude to carry on with this? I would like to if we're willing, but we are over schedule, over agenda time. Dr. Kavanaugh?
I'm fine with whatever you choose.
Let's forge ahead.
Okay.
I think, is your video frozen?
Yeah, there's something funny there.
Okay.
Start it back up again and see if that works. There we go.
You're very contemplative.
Yeah. All right. So I do have just the slides that show what the indicators say. And then I will, taking my lead from the comments on my goals a couple of weeks ago, I think it will just make sense if I kind of go through these at kind of a 30,000 foot level so that you don't have to sit through every single thing that has happened in the way of fulfilling these indicators to date. So I'll just start with, what are those indicators in the superintendent's rubric? There are standards, indicators, and elements. And a couple of years ago, DESE offered a rubric that stopped at the indicator level for superintendents. And so that's what we agreed as a district to work on. Yeah, maybe you'll be able to see this better. So the first one that we will talk about is curriculum. Curriculum is obviously 1A, and the indicator reads that the superintendent empowers administrators to ensure all instructional staff collaboratively plan, adapt as needed, and implement standards-based units comprised of well-structured lessons aligned to state standards and local curricula, continually monitors and assesses progress, and provides additional supports as needed. So just to talk a little bit about the ways in which I am meeting that particular indicator. And I know we've talked about some of these too, but I really feel like for people who are coming to school 50% of the time, our kids are getting, amazing instruction. And it's the instruction, I think, that is kind of compensating for the fact that they are with us only 50% of the time. One of our student council members tonight, I think, paid the teachers an enormous tribute when he said, I feel like I am still learning. And, those days that I have that are my at-home asynchronous days, I get a lot of work and I'm getting it done. So I do think that the work that Jen Parson did this summer, offering the modern classroom course along with Mr. Ghosh, is really paying off right now. I know that when we were making that transition to Schoology in the way of curriculum, it was, let's say, to say it was a bumpy ride would be understatement. It was really difficult to ask our teachers to get to that place, and yet that is now housing all of our curricula. And while it's still not perfect and it's still not easy to navigate, I do believe that our teachers and our students are growing in their comfort levels and their efficacy in the use of that product. Our elementary curriculum teams are, still working together in amazing ways. We've got PLCs all over our district, and they are supported through our ELA director and our math coach. And you know that next year we are looking to make that math coach a 1.0 FTE, which we're really excited about. We believe, as you know, that coming back after a pandemic, we're probably going to need that additional support. In grade 6, we are doing a really nice instructional review of our ELA model. What are we doing? How is it taught? What do classes look like? And we've got our ELA director working with the 6th grade as well. When we originally brought her on, we thought she would be K-5, and she's transitioned beautifully to middle school work. We have a consultant that we've hired to take a look at pre-K and talk about the ways and think about doing it more efficiently that our pre-K kids are transitioning into integrated kindergarten classrooms. The civics projects are going really well at the middle school, and the high school is kind of just in that place of getting their civics project underway as well. And then kudos to Jen again, who has done an amazing job of getting grant money so that we could kind of free our teachers up to assess the standards and how to maximize access to those standards. What really is the most important thing that we can present to kids while they are in person with us, and what are the things that we will ask them to do when they are on the at-home days. And I know this may not be part of this, a big piece of this presentation, but I can't help myself to mention it. Craig Hay, when he came to Jen and me and said he really wanted to be able to do brass and woodwind instruments, we kind of rolled our eyes and thought that can't be possible. But kids are draining those brass instruments into puppy pads right now for band. So where there is a will, there is in fact a way. The second one is instruction, sets high expectations for the content and quality of instruction, and empowers all administrators to do the same, such that instructional practices throughout the district are engaging, inclusive, and personalized to accommodate diverse learning needs of all students, stays informed of evidence-based instructional practices, and provides resources and supports to implement them as needed. I will say that I believe that this is a true strength for the Hopkinton Public Schools, not this year, just this year, but always. I think that we are constantly thinking about how differently students learn. A beautiful illustration, I think, this year is that when we got to that place of planning instruction for this year, we said all of our students on IEPs need to be invited into school every day. Our students who are WIDA levels 1 to 3 need to be in and having those kinds of conversations person to person with kids every single day and with teachers every single day. So those have been amazing things. I think when we developed our MOA with the HTA, going through that process, we looked at kids who might be disenfranchised from school, and they would have all teachers who would have not been Hopkinton High School excellent. And we sought that live streaming for our kids at Hopkinton High School, especially where there were some of those courses that would not have been accessible even online. I want to be sure that people know that we are, not just teaching our kids this year, and we're doing things that I do not think other districts are doing. We have STAR data for all of our students. We have QRI, so we're doing reading assessments for our kids. Our kids are taking our basic sort of homegrown unit and module tests, and we're using that to direct targeted instruction. We have early literacy with work that we are doing for our pre-K kids and our K kids, so that we have ways of kind of screening for dyslexia. We have a couple of ladies that we are working with from Lesley University who are helping us with some of that reading instruction. So that has been an amazing addition, I think, in terms of hiring a consultant. And we also are doing some Kathy Richardson math interview method. So in addition to those kinds of assessments that you do with kids that are, either online or number 2 pencil, this is just a different way to look at mathematics instruction. So all of that is in place, even in a year when we are dealing with a COVID-19 pandemic. So kudos to the teachers, to Jen, to Ashok Ghosh, Karen Zaleski. They are really making this magic happen. Jennifer Suker in our district. So we couldn't do it without them. Deb Moriarty, Shelley Moran, they've been amazing, and all the building principals.
May I interject a comment here?
Of course, absolutely, Leah.
I think one of the things that is key to me when I look at this is empowers all administrators to do the same, right? A real leader does not push just their agenda. They allow, their intelligent employees and their really dedicated employees to be able to come up with ideas to help, et cetera. And I think that's one of the places where you've excelled. When I hear about things like the diversity book clubs that different principals have put together, and the small groupings of administrators that support them for particular effects. And they're different at every school because, each principal is different, but it's also different between the guidance counselors. And you can see how empowered the people under you feel. And I think, to me, that is absolutely one of the kind of highest bars of a good leader. So I really appreciate this particular one.
Well, thank you. It is a tricky line to walk, because I think people who know me know how passionate I am about curriculum and instruction. But I love to know what is happening with curriculum and instruction, so that if we have all of that QRI and BAS and STAR data, and how are we looking at reading or transitions from pre-K to integrated K and all of that, I love to know that information. But at the same time, we have to kind of let all of the people who inhabit our district fulfill their roles. So it really is lovely. And I will say that our principals, we're very fortunate that they're not just leaders, they're instructional leaders. And that is a true strength in Hopkinton. All right, 2A is environment. This one, and I don't mean to laugh, but it's almost a little bit comical. Empowers all administrators to develop and execute reflective plans, procedures, routines, and operational systems to address a full range of safety, health, and emotional and social needs of all students throughout the district, as evidenced by orderly and efficient student entry, dismissal, meals, class transitions, assemblies, and recess. And I'll stop after that first bullet, and that's why I say it's almost a little bit comical, because this summer, it was an entirely different summer. It wasn't, we're going to figure out who's in which homerooms, or who's going to stand out in the bus lot and do some bus duty in the morning. We had to rearrange the ways we did entry, dismissal, how we served lunch. And that meant the movement of thousands of pieces of furniture and QR codes, how we were going to get kids out of class, into class, out to mask breaks. I can't imagine a year when building principals worked harder at this process. And I think we started it with our reentry advisory group. And I know that when we began the work, there were building principals who thought, we will not see October 1st. It'll be the greatest, COVID spread ever, and we'll all be home doing remote. And, here we are in February, and that's not the case. Despite that, I think our school and district buildings are still, they're obviously very clean, but I think that they are welcoming. I know that they are safe. We've mitigated risk. And I just can't say enough about how pleased I am about our environment. I know our school counselors, guidance counselors, school psychologists, our school adjustment counselors are working super hard to ensure that our kids feel safe and supported. And, I know that next year when we bring kids back in, it's going to be an entirely different, it will be something we've never experienced before. We'll have kids who haven't done school in a year and a half. And yet I think this year is evidence that our principals and our support staff and assistant principals can do almost anything. 2D, laws, ethics, and policies, provides the resources and support for all school personnel to understand and comply with state and federal laws and mandates, school committee policies, collective bargaining agreements, and ethical guidelines. So I will start with, and maybe it's easiest to start with school committee policy, you know, that we have the policy working group and we are constantly looking at our policies. Sometimes it's because, you know, DESE is coming in to do a coordinated program review or tiered focus monitoring. Sometimes it's because we're in negotiations with the HTA or the paraprofessionals, or sometimes we have, you know, a simple singular employee concern. And in all of those cases, I believe that I am constantly in contact with our legal counsel. I certainly follow all of the, you know, collective bargaining rules, and I think that I am always ethical in my approach to those kinds of things. I think I'm very timely. I don't leave people hanging. We schedule meetings as necessary. So in all of those cases, I feel like we're doing a really good job of ensuring that we are where we need to be in terms of laws, ethics, and policy. 2E, fiscal systems. This one's rather timely because we've just finished the first part of the budgeting process, and now it's the ride from January to town meeting. Leads the administrator team to develop a district budget aligned with the district's vision, mission, and goals that address the needs of all students. Allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district school level goals, and seeks alternate funding sources as needed. Proactively communicates budget rationale to staff, community members, municipal stakeholders, and the school committee. Provides regular updates on implementation of the budget. So having just lived through this, I think you've watched me and obviously Mrs. Rothermick go through this whole practice, and even all of the directors and building principals who have come to share their budgets with you. I think our communication has been strong. I think our conservative approach has been something that really works, I think, for the community this year based on where we are. And our other, you know, the municipal side, I think we're trying to be, you know, very fair. But I think at the same time, we have kept kids at the forefront, and the vision and mission that each one of our building principals has, I think we can meet them if our budget remains the same. And I truly appreciate the $500,000 transfer from stabilization and into stabilization from the HCA money, because in the event that we need that to address needs that are unforeseen right now, or an incredible enrollment growth, we will be able to do that next year. Right, communication. I actually have two different indicators that are communication. This is the one that talks about supporting and empowering building administrators and other administrators to engage in regular two-way, culturally responsive communications with families. About student learning and performance, and also district-wide communications with families are provided in multiple formats and respect and affirm different families' home languages, culture, and values. In this one, I think I owe an awful lot to Jennifer Suker, who we have just hired to not only work with our L population, but also to help with equity and access in our district. She's done some amazing work. She's founded an LPAC for us, which we've been talking about doing for years. All of our report cards are translated into home languages. When we need someone to communicate with a family, you know, Jen figures out a way to make that possible. And I think that our administrators have been, you know, really working on all kinds of, you know, sort of culture, diversity, equity, so that now it's trickling down into the buildings. And I think that our teachers are even getting to a place where they are feeling a whole lot more comfortable having those kinds of what we would have called difficult conversations with students or with families when you're not quite comfortable with having those kinds of dialogues. So I think we're in a very good place. You'll remember that on opening day, we brought in Visions to help us with that work as well. All right, so cultural proficiency, I won't go through this whole giant list that I have because I think that I did that with one of my goals that is around cultural proficiency. But lead stakeholders to develop and implement culturally responsive policies and practices that acknowledge the diverse backgrounds, identities, strengths, and challenges of administrators, students, and staff. Empowers administrators with time, resources, and supports to build culturally responsive learning environments, and collaborates with the community, with community members to create a culture that affirms individual differences, models this practice for others. I think for the last 3 years, I have been modeling this practice for others. And this year, we've had Grant Hightower and Blackprint and Visions and all kinds of different consultants to come in and help us with the work. I know that the high school and middle school are doing their diversity work. We've stepped outside the comfort of the Hopkinton Public Schools, and many of us have aligned ourselves with the Hopkinton Freedom Team. So we're in I think, a really good place there. I won't continue to go through all of these, but we've done things that I think are just, sort of real organic and grassrootsy, and then things that are highly formalized. And we're making, I think, really good strides in that cultural proficiency. One thing that might be even related to this, and I was thinking about it tonight when Mr. Keller was presenting about the 10 to 13% of the kids who can't take that trip. And, sometimes it may be that a family has made a choice not to do that. Sometimes it might be monetary. But I think about the 10 to 13%, those kids who are in the middle school, and if they are on social media, they're watching all of their friends the entire time those other kids are away, having a great time. And when the other kids come back, I'm sure that they are talking about the trip and laughing about the trip and thinking about the trip. And I worry about the 10 to 13% who are disenfranchised. So when Mr. Keller did have that conversation with me, those might have been the kids that I really thought of when we were making that decision. All right, I think we only have a couple more to go. 4C is communications. This is a different communication one. Utilizes and models strong context and audience-specific interpersonal, written, and verbal communication skills. Actively seeks and incorporates feedback into decision-making and in communication rationale for the decisions to staff, family, community members, and school committee. And I think that I always try to do that, whether I'm trying to attend school committee office hours every once in a while, sending surveys to parents, working with the former reentry group or the new reopening planning team, writing blog posts, making presentations at annual town meeting, doing school committee presentations. One that we thought of, Jen and I, that was amazing was when we did the dry run, and we had just a whole bunch of people coming into the high school on a given day to see what it would feel like to sit in a hot classroom wearing your mask, listening to a teacher talk. Those are the kinds of things. And then I have a super fun one. I have a student at Hopkins who started emailing me a few months ago. He and I have been emailing back and forth for weeks now, and he, I think, knows as much about running the Hopkinton Public Schools as you do as schools committee members. All right, and then the last one is just managing conflict. In this position, there's, I think, great potential for there to be conflict. Models a variety of strategies for responding respectfully and effectively to disagreement and dissent, and resolves conflicts in a constructive manner such that all parties are able to move forward productively. Regularly strives to achieve consensus within the district and school communities while maintaining a commitment to decisions that are in the best interest of students. Empowers and supports administrators to use these approaches in their own leadership. I think for me in this particular indicator, the most important line is that I'm always working in the best interest of students. I know that when things broke down when we were negotiating with the Hopkinton Teachers Association, I really felt very strongly about live streaming because I felt it was in the best interest of students who would have otherwise been disenfranchised. I think when working with other groups in town, we've had to work through some rough patches in working with our public health officials, but I still feel like we're in a great place and we are moving forward collaboratively. The reentry process last summer was certainly not an easy one. we were faced with a lot of dissenting opinions about whether or not we should actually open our doors and whether it would be safe to do so or not. And we felt that it was right for kids, but it took a lot of, I think, sort of like massaging people's angst along the way. And I feel like in some sense, I've been able to do that pretty well. Are there places for me to grow with this? I will absolutely say yes, because when I get very committed to kids or to an idea, I feel very strongly about some things. If we look at things like athletics, I mean, there's another place where we could have had a lot of, I think, conflict this year, or even dealing with every single one of the COVID-19 positive students could have been conflict inducing. But I think our nurses have been wonderful. Our athletic director has been wonderful. And I think that as a district, we are very low in conflict in a time when it would be very easy to be much higher in it. So that is all I have for you, and I will stop sharing there. And thank you for the time on that. I know it was long.
Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. I'm going to suggest, since I don't think we had this really to really digest your commentary beforehand, I'm going to suggest that maybe we hold a lot of comments right now, maybe digest this and come back at our next meeting. We could always rewatch the meeting and come back with any questions or comments, having had a chance to really sort of mull over what you've presented. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I am going to send you just a copy of those, as well as a list of some of the things that I had talked about, but you'll see it in writing.
And, you know, if there's anything that you need from the committee in order to support you as you know, work toward these indicators, please let us know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It was a wonderful presentation, but I think Amanda made that recommendation that we sign off for the evening because my eyeballs are spinning.
Yeah, I was just going to make a recommendation just like that, because I think that we have a policy that is in a second reading that can hold. I do think we should do the items by consensus.
Okay. Sorry. I've got multiple items going here. All right, so as superintendent, I recommend that the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. Motion by Meg, second by Joe. Leah, how do you vote?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
And I'm an aye as well. And I would like to thank you for the long day. I know the policy group was meeting this morning, I think at 7 a.m. with Dr. Kavanaugh. And I know our administrators are always up by then and at work, working hard. So I will take a motion to adjourn. And sorry, just Dr. Kavanaugh, I don't want to not give due consideration to your indicators. I want to be able to take on what you said and come back to it because you've done so much work.
Well, thank you. There's no problem at all with that.
Okay.
Before the motion to adjourn, could I just very briefly request that at upcoming meetings, I liked the update we had on the reentry task force at this meeting. If we could think about a concise, maybe one slide framework update for each of the upcoming meetings that shows kind of progress or dependencies in the way of reopening and the red, yellow, green status on each at a high level, just some thinking into that. I think it would be great to have a
Sure.
quick update on reentry progress at each meeting.
Sure.
I'll take a motion.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Motion adjourned from Meg, second by Leah. Leah, how do you vote?
Aye.
Meg?
Absolutely.
Joe?
Aye.
Nancy?
Yes.
And I'm an aye as well. I appreciate the time tonight, and I appreciate the all of the work, Dr. Kavanaugh, that you did with the indicators together. And I'm looking forward to just circling back to that at the next meeting on the 25th. And thank you to the community. Have a good night, and we will see you at our next meeting on February 25th at 7 p.m.